It is quiet.
It's too quiet. Well, was that
Does that mean start talking?
Welcome to the second CWU Student Media Podcast. I'm your host, Jared Bissett. This is the place where the various student media outlets come together to talk about current and upcoming content. First, I'm joined by Marcus Schimmelfennig. Nice to meet you.
Yeah,
Did I pronounce that right?
Yep, definitely.
I did.
Yeah, we're on the right track.
Marcus is currently on the cover of the issue of Pulse that you can find sitting all over campus. So Marcus, tell me about the struggle of not only being a college student, but being a college athlete and also being a father.
It's just, I don't know, I guess it's kind of, so I guess being a student athlete here is more of the challenge itself. Like, that's a challenge of its own. Like, there's no harder task than getting up at 6 a.m., finishing up at 8, rushing to class without a shower, you having to eat, and then having to finish out your school, and then coming back for workouts, film, and stuff like that. Like, I don't think the athlete life gets respected enough. But then again, that's why we do it, because like that grind and that pleasure, that's like that feeling of hurt, that's what keeps us going, because we know, we get through this, we'll be all right going into the future. Being a student, I've kind of done pretty good with my classes, not necessarily the hardest, but being a student, father, athlete, it's more of like understanding what are you going to do, like what is your purpose, like the things that I've gone through. My focus nowadays is how am I going to apply that into his growth, into his identity, while letting him create his own identity. I guess that's the biggest challenge of being a father that I see, and that my dad kind of emphasized to me and my brothers is kind of, my dad sat back and watched us, but when we needed to be corrected or we needed to be adjusted in different areas, he was sure to be stern in those areas. That way we didn't leave out of his house being bad men. I feel like I'm pretty confident that we're pretty okay guys in the world.
Yeah. Well, and yeah, I'm sure the sports aspects of your life have taught you the type of lessons you would want to apply to fatherhood, and
definitely,
being coachable is a big part of making it to the college level.
For sure.
And I'm sure that having the discipline to develop that skill, and just that mindset of being coachable, which is really hard. A lot of people don't have it. I'm sure that helps. Does that benefit you being a father now?
Yeah, I'm a little more receptive of the lessons and why they were hard on us in different areas, because there's like for any other student, granted we all have our different scenarios and stuff like that, but for any other student, there's the support system is not necessarily present. All right, you get sent off to college and you're expected to do it by yourself, but from an athletic standpoint, we're taught to find support and be able to rely on our brothers, be able to rely on our coaches, and be able to listen and understand what they're telling us.
Yeah.
Like if we're being told to finish through the line, it's not because they're trying to bully us all the way through this set amount of yards. It's because when it comes to doing a job, you want to make sure you've done it the best you can all the way through. That way you leave no doubt. You know what I mean? And so those are kind of lessons that like I've kind of internalized, and I try to reflect, because at the end of the day, like when we come together at the end of the night, I want to be sure that I left no doubt when it comes to where you are or where I am. At the end of the day, I want to win the day.
Yeah. As you can see here, Marcus wears number 44. 44 is a very special number to the CWU football team. Can you tell me about what you did to earn that number, Marcus?
And plain and simple, dude, I'm just being the best me. I'm just constant grit and constant relentlessness to be a better me. And that's kind of where my teammates, like where they find they can come to me for that, right? In my determination and my love to want to be a better me each time I do something is kind of something that I try to emulate, so that they can be able to reflect those same traits, because like I said, dude, like at the end of the day, our team is all we have. Granted, coaches leave D2 programs all the time, but what stays is the players and our relationships off the field, on the field, in the locker room, like in our interactions, like across campus. Like the only reason I have that jersey number is because my teammates recognize me for I don't know, just being a consistent me. And so with me being in that drive, in that process of continuously doing that, I'm also bringing others along with me. There is no day where I would ever sacrifice our relationship to get higher up. If you can't come with me, then it's just not the move then.
So what does the number 44 mean to Central Washington football?
I haven't. There's a whole plaque about it, but it's given to the defensive player who I think most reflects different values such as grit, relentlessness, what it means to be a Wildcat athlete, just a leader in general. So I don't know, like my buddy Mariah Valles, he helped me out throughout the season because I got caught up talking about how I was trying to be I was trying to be a good 44 for the team rather than not being myself. But he kind of reminded me, he's like, bro, you got that number because you were just doing you.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, dog, just keep doing you. If you're wrong doing you, you did it your way.
I like that.
And so that's what I'm saying. I appreciate those guys because I'm not just like a leader on our team. I'm being led by other people. Mm-hmm. I'm just the one who has the number. I'm just the one who gets the publicity. That's all it is.
Well, I think that they made a good choice because I don't know. Fun fact: me and Marcus were in the dorms together freshman year, and he was right down the hall from me. And I just remember hearing there's this dude Marcus, and he walked onto the football team, and now he's starting. And it just kept growing from there. And I've seen you grow from that position ever since, and it's awesome to see you wearing 44.
I appreciate that.
I want to ask you about your son. Your son has quite the unique name. Could you tell us about it?
His first two names are Hawaiian. His last name is German. It goes Ikaika, Namaka Uli Uli, Okalani, Kumai, Hanu Hanu, Schimmelfennig.
And what inspired this?
So Ikaika is the name that my dad gave me. It's more of a Hawaiian name. My dad didn't give me a Hawaiian name. That's just something him and my mom just kind of dealt with. But when I grew up, he gave me and my brothers Hawaiian names to kind of adopt, and we, just whatever we exemplified, the names mean something, right? So Ikaika means warrior. So that's the name my dad gave me. So I gave it to my son. Namaka Uli Uli, Okalani Kumai Hanu Hanu. That's my dad's middle name, and he didn't give that to me because of, his relationship with his pops and stuff like that. He just, that's not something. Him giving me his middle name would be. My dad felt like he was giving my grandpa some respect that he didn't necessarily deserve, and that's neither here nor there. But I gave my son my dad's middle name because I wanted him to know that what he did for me. You feel me?
Yeah.
My dad was a dad to me. My dad was a leader to me. I'll follow him anywhere. And granted, if I would have had a girl, she would have had my mom's middle name, or she would have had my mom's name. But I gave my son his name because I want my dad to know that respect that, granted of what you've been through, you were there for me. You feel me? You did what you wanted to do, and you did what you expected of yourself to do with me, and I appreciate that. So for me to show that appreciation the best way that I can, I'm living my best life the ways that I can. But I want to extend our legacy by giving my son your last name. It's been in our name. It's been in our family for so long. Because there's only 4 Schimmelfennigs, 5 with my son. And one thing my dad emphasized to us was to leave a legacy. We can't leave a legacy if don't nobody know our names. Mm. And so if they're going to end up knowing our names anyway, they're going to have to learn them.
Hey, well, I think that's a perfect tribute to your father, and I think that's a great. You said that. So the name your son's first name is the name that your father gave you.
Kind of more of a nickname type of feel to it. So more of I adopted that name.
Well, that's what better name to name your kid than, man. That's awesome. Was there anything else before you get out of here you want to add about just what it's like being not only a student athlete, not only a student father, but both? That's got to be just a crazy life. The amount of work that must take is something that a lot of us can't fathom.
Well, that's kind of what it looks like on the outside, but waking up every day, I'm just like I said, I'm just doing a better me each time.
Yeah.
And my son, he's not necessarily an independent guy, but he's more self-driven. I just sit in the mornings, he doesn't necessarily whine too much. He likes to be by himself and play around, adventure around the house. Some of his toys are a little too kid for him already. All he wants to do is play with laptops or controllers or TV remotes. Like he wants all the interesting stuff. So.
How old is he now?
8 months, dude.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he'll be 9 months pretty soon.
That's awesome, man.
But like, I don't know. Being a dad right now, like I wouldn't necessarily say it's hard. It's just more of the hardest part of being a parent is more of like you want to teach your kids so much things, but if they're like whether they're in a position or whether they're old enough to understand these things, whether they're in a position that like to be able to accept and understand why, like I mean there are instances at the house where he's like doing something, I'm catching glimpses of some stuff that I used to be, some stuff
he's
that
only at 8 months.
Yeah,
That's
and
only gonna go up with time.
Exactly, I'm starting to recognize different deviations of what he's doing, and like my dad was doing, like my mom was doing, they just kind of taking us and leading us back, and I mean I'm doing doing the best that I can. His mom's doing the best that he can, like my dad, my mom, his other grandparents on his mom's side, like we're doing our best to be great people, and it helps that we have people outside, like our teammates and people who love us, who want to be there for our son. They want the best for him because they want the best for us, and they want to see the things that we care about succeed, because that's just who we are. We're good people. We try to be, and so at the end of the day, dude, like being a student athlete, dad, glorified as it may be, the hardest part is what's next.
Yeah.
The hardest part is what's next, but on top of that, if you too busy thinking about what's next, you're gonna miss what's happening now.
Yeah.
Like my man has 6 teeth right now, and he snuck up on us real quick. And look, we were here thinking like, okay, maybe he still wants binky here and there, but no, my man over here gnawing on stuff already, biting people. Like, come on, dude, he's growing up fast, and I don't want to miss none of it. So. Yeah,
man, absolutely. Well, hey, that's awesome. Make sure you pick up the current issue of Pulse. It's all over campus, posted on the newsstands all around campus. Thank you, Marcus, for being here.
I appreciate you having me.
Appreciate your time.
For sure.
Okay, my next guest is the person who wrote the story about Marcus, Maddy Wilson from Pulse. Thank you for being here, Maddy.
Thank you for having me.
I really appreciate you being here. Tell me about this story. I think this is really cool. It ended up being the cover story. Mm-hmm. Tell me about how you were inspired to do this story.
Yeah, so I was actually at a basketball game where I saw Marcus and his son, and like all of his friends were huddled around him, and I was like, the journalist in me was like, oh my gosh, that could be an amazing story idea, and we're actually in the same major. And so I sent him a quick email and just asked him a little bit about his story, to tell me a little bit about who he is, and I didn't even know he was a football player. I just thought he was a student, and it looked like he had a kid, and so the story kind of went from there. He was very interested, and we talked a lot, and he said that he was really interested in sharing his story, and I was really interested in telling it. I love personal stories, and I love meeting other students that are interested in sharing their stories. And I could already, this is really funny, so when I saw him with his kid, I already had pictured the headline, from football player to father, that alliteration. And so I already had like this whole image of what the cover was going to be, what the story was going to be. And then when I got to the interview portion, my whole story changed. I mean, this headline stayed the same, but I realized that it was less necessarily about like the fact that he is the student and the fact that he is the athlete, and more about the fact that he's this leader and he's this role model on campus.
Well, that's the craziest part of the whole story, is that he wears the number 44, which is like the most prestigious number at Central. And, on top of that, he's a father. And, it's like this triangle of things that, like, if any of us had 2 of those things, we'd be, like, overloaded. And he's doing all 3, like, magnificently, which is crazy. That's the craziest part to me.
Yeah, it definitely is. And he didn't even mention that he had this prestigious number when I interviewed him. He vaguely said something about 44, but it was nothing that, made me think about that aspect until I interviewed his best friend, Mariah Valles, and he was like, Marcus is number 44. And I was like, tell me more about that. What does that mean? And he told me the whole story. And then I got the opportunity to interview one of Marcus's coaches, Coach Cooper, and he told me the whole thing about how they knew from, the moment he walked on that he was this amazing leader, amazing student athlete. And Cooper described it as someone who embodies what CWU football and what Central Washington University represents. So it's someone who is a leader, is a team player, and who motivates other people. And so I wanted to focus on that a lot.
Yeah, man. And like I said to Marcus, I don't think they could have made a better choice. And I didn't want to say it when he was here, but my first year at Central, I saw Marcus every day. And it was just like, the dude was a legend. The dude was a legend on campus because it was just like this freshman that just walked onto the team and started as a freshman. And then not only that, we knew multiple football players, but Marcus was the one that was like, oh my God. And, just he's only gone up from there. And, I don't think they could have chosen a better player to wear 44. So then, what kind of challenges did you face from this story? Was there anything that really, every story comes with, like you said, when you first started it, you had a different idea from how it turned out. So I find that you gain things from a story and you find, good things from it, but then there's always something to the challenges you that you didn't expect. Can you think of anything like that?
Honestly, it was how many amazing quotes and amazing stories I had from all of these people that I interviewed that I had to fit in a 6-page story.
Well, that's a pretty good problem to have.
Yeah, honestly, it's the best problem to have because I had so many amazing stories from the coaches and anecdotes from Marcus just about experiences with his son. And for me, I guess the challenge was choosing what information told the story best and what information to leave out. And one story that I knew I had to keep in was what I actually turned into the lead. And this was a story about, he was telling me that sometimes he would go get his son from daycare and bring him to practice and set him up on the bleachers. And he described this whole scene of how, he would see his son sitting on the bleachers and he would do practice and then he would take him home. And so I knew that should be the start of the story because that's just a really touching part that showed, his fatherhood and athletics.
Yeah, and imagine the kind of surprise you come to practice and you see a 5-month-old sitting in the stands. That's insane. That's awesome. And he's going to be growing up around the sport and around someone who's really good at the sport from such a young age. From both of his parents that are athletes. And then I just love this story. I absolutely love it. Is there anything else you want to add before you get out of here?
No, I just wanted to talk a little bit about our new section.
Oh, I'd love to hear about it.
So we recently added an arts and entertainment section. So this is because we felt like we were doing a lot of stories in popular media. We did one on bad reputation last year, and I was thinking that we haven't incorporated a lot of music and film and celebrities into our magazine, and I feel like that would be really popular with just our student body and our general audience.
Yeah, definitely.
And so this is our first issue with arts and entertainment, and so we have 2 stories in that one. We have the pageant story, and then we have the in the public eye story. So basically the intent with arts and entertainment is it's so broad, but it's supposed to focus on things that we see on TV, that we see in the news, that just are general media related topics, and then kind of combine them into one section.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. That sounds like a great addition. And as a lifestyle magazine, you're always looking for things that grip that audience that we, Pulse has quite the audience, from college students to other people that subscribe outside of the college. I think that'd be a great section.
Yeah, and we also have been really trying to incorporate multimedia into all of our stories. So the Marcus story on our website will have video, photos, audio, and the actual text story. So we took audio clips from the people that I interviewed so that our audience could get a chance to actually hear them say those words and say those impactful quotes.
I like that. And yeah, I've noticed that you guys are, moving more to the multimedia side of things and not just print, which I think is great, and print and design. Well, thank you, Maddy, very much for being here. I really appreciate your time. Check out that new issue of Pulse. It's all over campus. Also, go to their website. Their website's great. They've got, more than the magazine can even offer, which is a lot, on their website. So make sure you check that out. Thank you, Maddy. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
My next guest is a familiar face. I'm here with Nick Tucker, who is currently reporting on the dining situation at Central. Nick, Can you tell us a little bit about your story, your methods, and kind of just what's going on in general with dining?
So, to put a long story short, in the fall of 2019, we gotten some rumors, things from students, saying that there were some issues going on with the dining services. And
we as in The Observer?
So The Observer in general, we'd been hearing things here and there.
Okay.
And then, so we kind of didn't have too much. We didn't have very many specifics on that. But we heard that there had been some changes to the staff and therefore to some of the policies, and that this was controversial among the students. But a lot of these things seemed like just general grievances with their managers, seeming like they were talking just in general about bosses they didn't like and stuff like that, or policies that rubbed them the wrong way.
So not exactly newsworthy quite yet.
It wasn't a focused situation, at least to what it seemed like to us.
Yeah.
But then this quarter, we got some more direct messages of people saying specifically what they had been seeing. And so one of the main things was the sick leave policy, which had been updated, modified, changed, and the language of this gets difficult because it was reiterated many times by the manager of dining, the associate director, Denise Payton, who was kind of the center of a lot of this controversy. She said many times that these were not new policies. These were policies that were all put into a more condensed place, communicated differently, and enforced differently.
And as I understand it, dining is under new management as of fall 2019, right?
Right. So Denise Payton is a new associate director. She was hired from Oregon State, where
she did the dining program down there.
She did the dining program there, but most of her experience is in general management. She ran a law firm before that. She's worked for the federal government.
Wow.
So it's not specifically in dining that her experience is in, but she has worked at a couple different places like that.
Okay.
And with them came some new supervisors and an overall rework of how they manage their employment. So specifically what these students brought up were changes to the sick leave policy. And at a couple of meetings that were held at the very beginning of fall quarter, where Payton was introducing herself and the new staff to the employees and talking about some ways that things are going to be changing, it was mentioned that menstrual cramps are no longer a reason to call out sick, which many brought up as potentially sexist, as potentially discriminatory, and they were told that this was in order to make things more fair for their male counterparts. So that was very controversial with a lot of the students.
Right.
Also listed was the common cold, which many saw as a major health concern, seeing that dining is working with food, and we don't want people with the common cold coming in.
Yeah, well, absolutely. Speaking purely as somebody who occasionally consumes food from down there, and someone who did for my entire freshman year when I had a food plan, I'd really hope that people aren't working with colds.
Right.
So
this could be a miscommunication because it was later reworked, both of these policies, to say that if students are experiencing these kinds of things, they can use their best judgment, and that they do need to fall within the state guidelines for working with food, which aren't, they don't talk specifically about specific ailments, like menstrual cramps, like the common cold. They don't say you can't come in with those ailments.
Yeah.
I don't know if menstrual cramps are an ailment. But they're more directed towards symptoms. So if your cramps are making you throw up, you can't work. If your cold is making you sneeze or have a runny nose, you can't work.
Okay.
You might be put into a different position where you're not working with food.
Well, that does make sense, and I can see how it would be tricky, given that, like, when I get a cold, I swear it doesn't go away for like 2 weeks, and
Right.
some people it's even worse. So, I mean, as a college student who's working, you probably need money more often than you can't afford to take a 2-week break. So, and people who employ you can't afford to lose an employee for 2 weeks.
Right.
So it's a very tricky situation. I can understand how both sides are kind of struggling in this, but
It is. So the difficulty is that this could be a miscommunication, that it was the harshest parts of the policies or the harshest wording that was initially given out, and that's what stuck in the students' minds. Or it could just be that it was reworked over the following weeks in order to be softer and be a bit more palatable because of the negative backlash from the students. But either way, something that that's absolutely true no matter why that policy was put into place, is that this majorly influenced how the students see their management.
Absolutely.
And a lot of them feel like they weren't heard when their grievances were brought up. A lot of them feel like they were shut down, and some of them even feel like they were retaliated against. And that became a major concern, especially for me gathering information when so many of my sources wanted to be anonymous for the understandable reason that they didn't want to be fired. And many of them felt like they would be fired. Many of them said that they had been threatened to be fired.
Can they be fired for speaking on something like this? Is that an actual legal ramification that could happen?
Well,
speaking to the media about something that's potentially dangerous?
That's the thing, is it may or may not come into conflict with First Amendment rights. They can't face retaliation, for instance, for going to HR.
Yeah, I'm sorry if this is a question that's kind of hard to answer given the circumstances.
Many businesses, of course, say our media policies are that you have to direct all media towards our management or a social media director or something like that. And many companies, of course, would fire their employees if those employees were trashing them online.
Yeah.
The difficulty comes in the fact that this is a public institution which is supposed to follow government guidelines, which says that they're not supposed to restrict free speech in any way.
Well, and especially given that there's, a student media that reports on things like this, and some of the student media members might even work there.
Right.
There's all kinds of different factors to play into this.
Right. And so even some students said that they had been told to take down tweets where they had been critical of dining services. And many had been told that they were not to talk to reporters.
Oh, man.
So that, of course, made it difficult. But, we have to protect the anonymity of the people coming forward. Otherwise, people aren't going to keep coming forward.
So, I imagine reporting on this story had, there's a lot of difficulty because, when you've got people, if you have purely anonymous sources, that can be tough to, seem credible, but it also makes it hard to say certain things when people want to remain anonymous because you can't out them at all.
Right. And that's just the nature of investigative reporting in general. You have to keep certain sources confidential and protect people's anonymity while trying to portray as much information as possible. But if you have a dozen people all saying the exact same story, then we can pretty much say that that's most likely true, or at least based on a true fact. Through getting so many different sources, we try to triangulate what exactly is true because, of course, people's wording changes and people remember what people said differently over time.
When people are emotional, this is something that's causing a lot of uproar in the student dining employees. Then it's something that people feel very strongly about. Even just people that have heard about it have been very vocal about this. So it is hard. I understand. But I think you've done a fantastic job reporting on this, Nick.
Well, we hope so. And a lot of people have reached out following this, saying that they have more information about dining services that they want to share, that they want to add to the conversation going on.
Good.
And we've told them, whatever you know, come forward and let us know, and we'll work with you to protect your anonymity, however best you need.
Absolutely.
But we want to get the full story as much as possible, and so because of that, I've interviewed Peyton a couple of times. I've interviewed people from CWU's HR, tons of different students, a couple different managers, just trying to get a fully triangulated view of the issue.
And so if you were to leave viewers with a message as far as if someone has something, an experience with dining that they'd like to share, do you want to leave a message with them for your final statement?
Well, go ahead and contact the Observer. I mean, our job is to be a voice of the students. Not strictly to advocate for the students in a specific perspective, but to tell their stories. And if their stories are being suppressed, they have every right to come to us, and we'll help them however they need.
Absolutely. Do you want to add anything before we get out of here?
I think that's it.
Thank you very much. Nick. Always a pleasure to have you on.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it. Make sure you pick up the current issue of The Observer. Nick has been writing about this for a couple issues now. He's done some fantastic investigative journalism on this story, and it's very important. It affects all of us. My final guest is Mariah Valles. She is here with Newswatch and Observer. She's a reporter for both of them, and she's going to talk about a couple different stories she's doing. The first one is pretty big news. James Gaudino, our president at Central Washington University, announced that he is stepping down. Not only, I wouldn't say retiring, because he's stepping down to become a comm professor. Am I correct?
Kinda, that's definitely a possibility for him. But one of the craziest things was, it was 11 the other day, and we got a press release.
Thank you for being here, by the way.
No, it's fine. We got to the point where we got this press release and we're like, hey, are they announcing the new provost? Are they announcing, I honestly thought that maybe they were going to announce like another satellite school or something. But for sure, we get the announcement, right before the press conference that they held that, he would be stepping down in 2021. It's obviously not an immediate thing. And to be honest with you, that was a misunderstanding that I had. I thought that he was retiring.
Yeah.
But no, he still wants to be in Ellensburg, and he said that around at the press conference too. He just wants to, maybe be in the comm department, which, as a comm student, that'd be pretty cool to take a class from, Gaudino.
Yeah, and he was a comm major. He's tenured in the department. So yeah, I've heard that he might want to be stepping into that position. That'd be very interesting to have the former president teaching your,
Right.
intro to comm class or something.
Well, it's
That'd be pretty
interesting.
wild.
It's interesting because, he's, I guess, I didn't know this before, but, when you become the president of a university, you're automatically tenured.
Yeah, I heard that.
Which is kind of interesting. So yeah, he's automatically tenured,
Yeah.
Which is, kind of interesting part of it. But yeah, we went to the press conference and of course it was packed with people and, it was a cool experience as a student journalist. I think it's hard, we don't really get to cover too much breaking news
Yeah.
on campus. So that was, kind of cool.
That was the first really big one I can think of, like this year, like
Yeah.
2020. Like Gaudino announcing that was like, we got the email and then everybody was just all of a sudden like, who's going to be there? Like,
Yeah.
who's going to be reporting on this? I knew it was going to be you in Boston, which is,
I couldn't miss out, really. It's really fun getting just to jump in there and like, hey, I'm gonna go grab a camera, I'm gonna write a story. It was crazy because right when we got the email, which I think was like about a half an hour from the press conference, they announced it in the email, right? Well, of course, I grabbed a laptop and it was kind of funny. I was actually at a grocery outlet, like getting like a drink and like a snack, and nope, I booked it to Barge Hall and
Yeah.
wrote the story in the very end and put it out to Observer social media. And then we were there for Newswatch, so it's my Newswatch story this week. And yeah, it's a lot of fun that we get to have those opportunities just to run right to it and cover it.
well, yeah, they say the most fun things are spontaneous, and I think that's certainly true in journalism. Like
Right.
my most fun stories, one of them was, you kind of just lobbed me the story about Buddy the Parrot's birthday, and it kind of just happened last minute, and that's, I think, the best story I've ever done, and it just kind of was very fast, and it happens like that.
Buddy girl.
Absolutely. I want to ask you too about the other stuff that you're covering. There's this rumor that has been floating around Ellensburg for quite a while that Ellensburg doesn't recycle. And then recently they stopped recycling glass, and people are like, well, did they ever recycle? And now it's like speculation. And then we have an amazing investigative journalist, and a couple of them, Nick Tucker, I believe, and Austin Lane went with you.
Lane didn't go with me.
He didn't go with you.
Cassie. So, anyways, so what kind of happened was last week, Nick Tucker, who's the news editor, myself, I'm the managing editor of Observer, the editor-in-chief Cassandra Hayes, and then news reporter Bailey Tomlinson. We got into a car and we drove to the Spokane recycling unit, which, if you think about it, you probably think that they're turning, a plastic bottle into another plastic bottle there, right? Well, that's wrong. They're actually just a sorting facility.
Mm-hmm.
So, and just to address the rumor, yes, for years here, I've heard, Ellensburg doesn't recycle. Kittitas County doesn't recycle.
I've heard of professors say
I know.
that before. Like, it's crazy. It's a very rampant rumor.
Which I am here to let you know that the county does in fact recycle. With the glass specifically, it's kind of interesting. So I guess there's just...
Say that again. Mariah Valles, you heard it here first?
Kittitas County does recycle.
Thank you.
But, it's basically kind of what happened was for the glass situation is that there's just not a market for glass anymore. So
Yeah.
technically they can't say they recycle glass because they're not turning it into new glass, but they do use it in different ways, such as in asphalt, which, a lot of people don't realize that. But yeah, so Ellensburg does recycle. And what Spokane does is they end up sorting things out. And it's kind of crazy going in there because it's all done by hand. So like they take the bottles, they take the cardboard, everything, and it's all sorted out by hand, goes through all these different steps, which if you want to know the steps, you should read Nick's Observer story. It's the center spread in Observer this week. And then, of course, I'll have a little bit piece here and a little bit on Newswatch about 2 weeks out. I'm doing some special stuff with it. So.
Good. Well, keep an eye out for that. That's going to be awesome. I'm really looking forward to that one. As somebody who's been living here for like 5 years and has heard this rumor constantly. And then also, that a big part of that I took was that the reason they're saying they're not recycling glass is because by terminology they're not recycling glass, but it's still being used for certain things. It's just not turning into new glass.
Right.
So it's not that it's not going to some kind of use. It's just not. Yeah, the glass, as I understand, like you said, the glass market is, not the same as like the plastic and
people
cardboard.
just weren't buying it anymore, and so the person who we toured the facility with said that basically the facility in Kittitas County decided together that they would no longer be taking it anymore. But it is, again, still being used in things like asphalt.
Okay. Is there anything else you want to add about, either of these stories or any upcoming content from Observer or Newswatch you're working on?
I think just that, stay on the lookout for everything in Observer. We've got an amazing team this quarter, and the content that we're getting just keeps getting better and better.
Absolutely.
Next week, we're headed to San Francisco alongside Pulse for the Associated Collegiate Press Journalism Conference.
That's
and
awesome.
so peep our social media accounts too. I know we're going to be kind of on the run there doing some stuff on social media and, just having a blast learning how to better our program. So, pay attention to the Observer, because every time we go to one of those conferences, we come back with new things to implement and how to make our program, our publication, and just overall a whole bunch better. So
Absolutely, man. Well, wish Pulse and Observer luck in San Francisco. Thank you for being here, Mariah. That wraps up our second episode of the CWU Student Media Podcast. Thank you so much, Mariah. High
Yeah.
five. Oh, that was horrible. Let's do that. Let's run it back. Better. Much better. Thank you. Here, put your chair up a little bit, and then.
Oh yeah?